All right, welcome everybody again to Just Like Me. I am your host Nick, along with Emil, or I'm sorry, Phil. Emil again is still on vacation and will hopefully join us our next meeting. Um, Phil, how you doing, man?
Always good, man. Always
Yeah,
good.
it's last time we recorded this. For people that don't know, it is the 16th of May right now. So we are in halfway through Asian Heritage Month. Asian Heritage Month starts in May. There's a lot of things where we are in Iowa. There's celebration May 26th and 27th. I'm actually going to go down there this year. Maybe play a fun game for the channel. So there was a thing a while ago called Name That Asian, which was kind of fun, a fun game. They would show a bunch of Asian celebrities, not just actors, but they would show singers, rappers, people in social media, anything, and how many people can name them, even Asian people. It was a lot of fun, but
I lost you there.
oh, you're gonna go too?
No, no, I think I lost you for a second on the
Oh,
video.
sorry. Can
It
you
was on my end or your end,
Okay, cool. I
but
hope that the sound is still good here. Um, but yeah, and
yep. Now,
yeah, can you hear me? I think it's your end. You froze.
hello, my end.
Yeah, you're freezing up.
All
Um,
right.
yeah, there you go. Now you're good.
Okay.
Cool. Um,
But
but yeah, it started off as kind of a fun, entertaining game, and the guys that did it was ended up being kind of a social experiment. Um, because if you walk down the street and you ask a lot of people name a white actor, they could probably name six, seven, maybe off the top of their head. You ask them name an African American actor or actress, they might be able to name four or five off the top of their head. And then you get to Hispanic, Latinos, maybe a few, not as many, but there's still a few. But you ask them to name Asian actors off the top of their head, they might be able to do two, maybe three, but not many. And another thing that they kind of saw was that they would show pictures of Asian actors and they wouldn't actually know their name, but they would know the character that they played in a movie. They would show a picture of Daniel Day Kim and everyone would say, "Oh, the dude from Lost." But no one actually knew his name, not even other Asian people. So it ended up kind of being an experiment to show that kind of like we as Asian Americans don't really even uh we don't really even kind of know, and I think that might be also why there's a lot of not as much representation too. But yeah, I'm gonna go down and do that maybe and play some fun games and have some content for them. And then in the fall, we should all look into this. In the fall, there is one in Cedar Rapids here, called Asian Fest. It's very similar to the thing. It's kind of to introduce people back into school and everything. And we can go and do something fun there and stuff. So
yeah, in the fall I might be able to do something. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make it to the one here locally this weekend or next weekend. Uh, it's my son's graduation, so
Oh, well, congrats, man.
so we'll be doing stuff with that. So unfortunately, won't be able to make that one, but
Oh,
pretty
awesome.
excited. Pretty excited.
That's awesome, man. So yeah, let's go ahead. One thing I wanted to kind of talk about was we don't really get into it too much. We talk a little bit about it. But maybe like Asian like some films, they don't necessarily have to be all Asian casted films or anything, but films that have strong Asian characters in them. One for me was I remember seeing The Hangover for the first time. I went with some friends, and every time Ken Jeong was on screen, I just remember my friends kind of looking over at me, and it was like I'm not like that, but it was kind of like I don't want to say first mainstream Asian because there's been a lot, but he was the one that I think it was he became in the modern era kind of he was big more popular, I think, and now he's a huge stand up, and I think he kind of got a lot of popularity because of that. So
Yeah, no, I
yeah.
love his character from Hangover. He was absolutely hilarious and arguably the best part of that film, in my opinion. And I
Yeah.
feel like there's a lot of other people that might agree. His character was absolutely hilarious. Uh, so yeah, I mean that's a great one. As far as like, so I know, yeah, we decided that we were gonna do this episode on some of our favorite films with like a strong Asian character. So
Yeah, yeah.
I started going through my mind of all kinds of different movies,
Okay.
and it really like there's a lot of them out there that I really like, but I started to realize like the ones that I thought had like strong Asian characters that I really like are all within like the past decade,
Oh yeah.
which was like it was kind of a big thing for me like to come to that revelation. Like I said, they've all been in like the past 10 maybe 15 years if you stretch some a little bit, but for the most part they've all been relatively modern. Most of the older ones that I could think of, like I love the Indiana Jones series. So
Oh,
like Temple of
yes.
Doom, had Short Round, uh, was hilarious, and I love Short Round, and I love the Goonies and stuff like that. But then like I think about it, and those characters were fun, interesting characters, but they were kind of stereotypes anyway. But it was something that like those characters I kind of identified with because I was kind of a dorky kid anyway when I was in high school and middle school and grade school and stuff like that. So I'm still kind of a dorky kid right now. So that hasn't really changed a whole lot. So like I said, I identified with those characters a lot. But like I said, as far as older movies, that was it. Everything else was like super racist or super like terrible characters. I guess Hook, I liked Hook. Uh that had an Asian character. Ruvio was one of my favorite characters in that.
Dante Bosco, man. Yeah, he was kind of one that was like,
And he
you know,
wasn't so
yeah,
much
I don't.
stereotypical. So
And
like
and
so
and was Rufio actually like in the book of Peter Pan and all that stuff? Was he actually Asian too?
I have no idea.
I love that casting because that's like he was good. He was good as Rufio. So
And then like I like movies like Ninja Turtles. So the
yes.
second Ninja Turtles movie had you know a strong Asian character in that one, but again, it was kind of your stereotypical, hey, I'm a martial arts guy, and that's my whole and only purpose.
Yeah.
Like I started thinking about it, and I'm like, a lot of my favorite movies that were older than that are all like martial arts movies or foreign films. Because
Yes.
there's a ton of foreign films that I was huge fans of, but they were of course foreign films. So as far as American films with Asian characters that were strong, the first one I could really think of that was like really strong Asian characters uh, was Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. That was the
Yes.
first one that I could really think of. And after that one, you started seeing slightly more. But that was really it. That was the first one that I could think of that I was like, wow, there's really nothing.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm a huge fan of like foreign films. I was a big samurai films guy, even
Oh,
in
cool.
like, middle school and stuff like that. Akira Kurosawa is one of my all-time favorite directors. So I watched like everything he did, and he did so many great like dramas, some like crime thrillers. He did samurai films. Seven Samurai is one of my favorite films of all time.
Did he do like Rashomon?
Yes,
Yeah.
Rashomon.
Okay. Yeah. Kurosawa. I had to watch some of his films in film school. That's like a big thing that you have to. I mean, of course, it's like him and a bunch of other people. But yeah, man, I love Kurosawa.
But he's just phenomenal, and I love him. But I started thinking about it. I'm like, okay, so I've got all these great films that I love, but almost none of them are American.
Yeah.
They're all relatively new,
Yeah.
which I mean, it says a lot about like, hey, what was there? Because like I love Bruce Lee films as well. Like Enter the Dragon, great film, I love
Hey,
it.
the
But
shirt
again,
is
like,
from Enter the Dragon,
right?
actually. There it
And like
is,
you said
man.
at one time though, he is like the embodiment of the Asian stereotype.
Yes, that's
Which
the unfortunate part was Bruce made everything cool and made Asians like relevant again, but he was a big stereotype, unfortunately, like the martial arts and
And I mean, yes, he was a big stereotype, but think about where we'd be if Bruce Lee never came along.
I mean, yeah, for sure. He kind of made it
Broke
cool to be
into industry and made it like something that was able to be seen at all. He brought martial
Yeah.
art
I
in
love
general.
Bruce, man. I mean, I know a lot of people are like, oh, he's a stereotype, but for me, it was like it was the first character when I was a young kid and I did the martial arts. He was like the first character I saw that I actually kind of related to because he looked like me. He was like right now with my height, I'm about this. I think he was 5'8", I'm 5'7", so I'm about the same height and same weight as him, and everything. I wish I had the same body build as him, but it was one of those things. And then the way he moved and the way he spoke and just everything was so cool. And I wish he could have lived longer because it would have been, let's see what he can do other than martial arts films because he was an actor and everything. Is Jackie's the same way? I know like everyone associates Jackie Chan with like kung
The
fu and
martial
martial arts, but he's like an actor. He does a lot of acting, and Jet Li too is the same thing. I wish there was a film I just saw with Jet where it had nothing to do with martial arts at all. It was based on a true story and uh, about a Chinese guy. I'll have to look up the film and I'll post it in the link, but on our channel. But um, he plays a dad of an autistic child and he's older and he's like dying and knows he's gonna pass, but he's trying to, and his son has nobody else, so he's trying to like get it set up so that his son can still live, and like he so arranges it with his job that his son can just be like a janitor and stuff. It's a really sad film, and it's like the first time you see Jet like not doing kung fu, so it was very interesting, and I think people forget that. I think they see Jackie and Jet and think, oh, they're just kung fu guys, but they actually do a lot of acting. Donnie Yen is the same way. I mean, he
Oh
does
yeah.
action, but he's a very good actor. So
But yeah, I mean, like I said, like most of the Asian like films with Asian characters in it that I like are almost exclusively foreign films, which I thought was kind of sad when I really started to think about it. Or like they'd be these, stereotyped characters until very recently, where you started to see stuff. I mean, a lot of shows like I loved Fresh Off the Boat and Kim's Convenience. I love the dad from Kim's Convenience is in Star Wars now, so he makes pretty regular appearances on the and stuff. But I love his character. His character is great, and he's sort of this like authoritative character, but he's a great character. But like I said, most of the stuff that I've seen is like relatively new. Like I love The Farewell. Uh, Farewell was a phenomenal film. I don't know if you've seen that one yet, but if you haven't, definitely watch it. I love
yes,
Minari. I know I've on this show I've talked about Minari so many times, but Stephen Yeun in that was just fantastic.
yeah,
Um,
yep.
but and then like there's been a lot recently that have been really good that I've been like, hey, these are
Parasite was good.
Parasite was good, but again, foreign film. So
Yes,
for
porn.
like it is just weird to me that like, okay, I can name all these foreign films and I can name all these relatively new films within probably most of them within the last 5 years even. So I'm like, it's kind of nice to see that growth as well. So when I started thinking about all the stuff in the past, I was like, yeah, there's not a whole lot of really great, strong characters made in this country. And then all of a sudden, like more and more throughout the years, you've seen it grow. So that means that we're clearly trending in the right direction as far as representation and having it actually represent us versus a stereotype. So it's been one thing that I've been really, I was kind of happy to see it, but then at the same time I was just like, man, yeah, my whole life I didn't have anything, did I? Like when I was young growing up, like all the Asian characters that I could identify with were just like you said, stereotypes, which was weird to think about for me. It was weird to try and go through and remember some of my favorite films, and I was like, yeah, most of my favorite films didn't have Asian actors in it, just because they just weren't there, or they were there and they were just like terrible character. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Breakfast at Tiffany's is considered I liked the movie, but I didn't make Rourke's character in it. Um, or not, Mickey Rooney, Mickey Rooney, uh, stereotypical look at a Japanese American. And it just, I mean, I think Mickey Rooney even himself said it was his largest regret in his entire act doing it. And I don't think he even went to like the premieres and stuff after he saw like original, like first like screenings of it, because he was not a terribly racist person, and I think even he felt like, wow, this is awful. So,
Yeah, you know.
but I mean, you get a lot of stuff like that where you get all these.
I think I
Don't
lost.
see a lot of until relatively recent. But like I said, there has been an explosion of stuff recent, just everywhere. And I'm like, talking for TV movies on Netflix and stuff like that have been really good. Like what I'm trying to think of names of them. Give me a second. Let me look something up. I can't remember. But just some like romantic comedies and stuff that have been out there that have had a.
I think your feed is going out, man. You keep going in and out here. Your video is like really bad. It's really blurry right now.
Oh, I'm sorry, man. Yours has been going in and out too. So I don't
Has
know if
it?
it's
Okay,
my
cool.
internet and I'm just losing you, or
Yeah. It's probably it might be me, and then it's causing, and it looks on my end that it's you.
could be me too. So I have no idea.
Okay, cool. Let me see if I can fix it here. But yeah, man, I do like like you said, Breakfast at Tiffany's. I know there's been some films where, of course, like we've talked about whitewashing before on the show, and unfortunately, like with the Asian race, that whitewashing still goes on today. It's the only, I think we're the probably only race of people that they still whitewash roles for. You'll never see a white actor. I mean, other than like Tropic Thunder, but like you'll never see really a white actor
Yeah,
go
but with
full
Tropic
blackface.
Thunder, that one was very on purpose to do it.
Yes, and it was
And
like
it was to talk
satire.
about like how, the satire of how ridiculous it is to
Yes,
do that.
yes, and I enjoyed that, but like again, we've talked about it. Ghost in the Shell could have been so much better. I mean, the anime was good, but let's cast ScarJo, but let's give her black hair and these contacts with these eyes. Like, why not just get an Asian person that has that then? There's several Asian women that you could have hired to do it.
Oh, there were so many that you could
And
have.
I get it. If I'm sitting there as a studio and I have all the money and I'm the person with all the money, I get it. You want a name that's going to sell. You're going to put $100 million into something. You want to get a return in your investment. I totally get that. ROI is important, but you have to do it. I think that you would have probably made more money having, even if you had like an unknown Asian actress even come in, it probably would have like launched a career and it would have been even better.
A Ghost in the Shell as a name had enough of a following. You were going to have a huge, huge turnout no matter what.
Exactly. So there was no point in whitewashing that. And then Doctor Strange, I know they've come out and said, "Oh well, it's a Celtic monk," but I think that's the way that they're saying it to save themselves
So
from
here's the.
whitewashing a monk role. So
Are you talking about the Asian or the ancient one?
yes,
So, so from that standpoint, I think I've talked about this before. Yes, they whitewashed it, but that one was 100% uh, based on other markets.
yes,
Basically, they did not want to lose out on the Chinese market, which is a huge market in the film world. It is the second largest market in the world, behind the American market.
yeah, of
Um,
course,
and if you cast that person and you make that person's background the same as it was in the comics, it would have been banned from China.
yeah,
So, like, yeah, it sucks. But at the same time, like that one is a more understandable because that character was from a place that is not recognized from China, and they're still very, very controlling over there. And it's like, oh, that place doesn't exist. We're not going to show this movie. So I, to
I
some degree,
and the whole Tibet
understand
thing.
making the
It's
change.
totally cool, and I understand the whole Tibet thing in China. But then at least get a Chinese actor to play a Chinese monk, a
Yeah,
Buddhist
pretty
monk, or
much. Yeah,
something like that. Why get a white person to do it? When when in this in a when we live in a country where that is like about religion, that people get mad if you don't believe in God and all that. So it's like, oh well, we'll just take a person and we'll put a white person and we'll put him in as a monk. It's cool. It's it worked. Doctor Strange, it didn't really take anything, I don't think, away from Doctor Strange or anything like that, but it's just unfortunate that that was another opportunity for an Asian actor or actress, and they didn't get it. And it's just all those type
But
of
like I said, that
things.
one,
So
yeah, that one there was of a thought and a strategy behind it versus so many of the other ones. It's just like, what were you even thinking? Where as to where we thought that would even be remotely good.
yeah, yeah, I agree, man.
There,
But yeah, man,
oh yeah,
another film, a film that I saw, another one that I loved growing up. You had mentioned, I remember you had mentioned Harold and Kumar. I remember uh, we're at that age where, like, for some reason, the one that sticks out to me the most, which was like a comedy role, was do you remember Not Another Teen Movie?
yeah, kind of.
And they have the Asian, instead of, they always say, oh, there's the Tolkien, African American character, and then they put like the Asian character in it. And in that one, they had like, it was like, I think it was three or four Asian dudes and one white dude trying to be Asian. And he spoke with broken English and was like, "What's up, my brothers?" And like, just it was ridiculous. But I just remember thinking like, "Oh man!" Like that was like in that era too for me, going to a movie with friends. That and Tokyo Drift were like the first two films that, like, for me in high school slash college, that I saw people that look like me in a modern day film, and more in a modern day film, that like my friends and I went to and watched, because we got drugged to, we went to, of course, I mean, I'm a huge Star Wars fans, and oh, of course the original 4, 5, and 6 will always be Star Wars to me. But growing up, I got the opportunity to go to 1, 2, and 3 in theaters. And I know there's been a lot of talk about like how Asians are really non-existent in the Star Wars world, which is kind of funny to me. I mean, now they're starting to add more, but it's just kind of funny because it's like the Chinese population is so big that you would think there'd still be some somewhere, even though all those years, and there's hardly any in that world. So, but then yet the Jedi live this kind of like samurai life, like honor and devotion, and they have sabers like their katana. So it's like they kind of took this Asian culture but gave it to the Jedi. It was, but I love Star Wars, and we got to go, and we didn't really see it, and then we went to Lord of the Rings was big, and of course, no Asians really in those movies, and all that stuff. And I remember my friends, we went to Fast and the Furious, and I remember Tokyo Drift was came out, and we went, and it was like, holy cow, finally. And it was like, the fish out of the water was the white kid, and that was the foreigner in that film.
Yeah, but it was the fish water. It was also the white savior thing.
Yes. Yeah, and that was the thing I
Like,
hated about that film, was like, oh, but it's the white kid that's got to save them from the Yakuza, that has no idea
right.
about Yakuza or how it works, and they probably would have just killed him if it was real Yakuza. So that was the big disappointment, where it was like, I kind of felt good because I was like, oh, it's a movie that has the majority of the cast look like me, but then it's like, oh, but they have to be saved by a white guy, you
Yeah.
know?
So
And
I've got some problems with that
and then
too.
and then Harold and Kumar came out, and it was like, oh, an Indian and a Korean, that's cool. But then they were just kind of like totally stoners and like, like I mean, it was cool because they didn't have accents and they were just normal people. But
But
then it was like they didn't really show like they just made it seem like, oh well, that's what they do. They just get high all the time and everything else. It's like, no, we just live normal lives. And then but then not another teen movie came out, and then I remember seeing that, and I was just like, man, like, we don't have any good roles that like portray us as just regular people. We're never the love interest. We're never like there's the white girl across the way is like falling in love with us, so yes, until
now,
recently.
Jimmy O Yang did a movie. It was like a Netflix movie. Man, give me a second. Let me look it up. I don't remember what it was called. Oh, it was called Love Hard.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It was like a Netflix, but he's the Asian love interest,
Yes.
everything, which is great because he's this like dorky guy
Yes.
and
I
everything.
saw that. I watched it and I was like, you know what? I wish we would have had this earlier because it was like he's not, and it's nothing against Henry Golding or any of them, but he's 6'2", um, and he's half Asian and all that. And it's like every Asian male, I think we wish we were 6'2", and is tall. And Jimmy is, I think, the same height as us. I think he's 5'7", 5'8". He's like the typical Asian guy. So I'm so glad that they went that direction and casted him because he was awesome in that.
Yeah, but I mean, like the whole premise is like, hey, never find anybody without pretending to be somebody else, which
Yeah.
which hit hard with me as well because that's how I felt. Like I felt like I'd never have a shot with anyone, you know, representing myself as, and like you see his struggle and everything. It was not. I'm not going to go out and say that it was the best movie of all time. It's your typical rom com kind of thing, but it was nice to see that character taking a lead versus being the comic relief.
Yes.
If that makes sense. I love Jimmy O Yang. He's great. I loved him in Space Force. I don't know if you saw Space Force, but I love his character in that.
Yes.
I even loved him in Silicon Valley. His character was spoke with broken English and everything like that. So, and it was kind of stereotypical, but his character was hilarious in Silicon Valley. So
Yes.
it's one of those things that like Jimmy O Yang, he's got a great stand up. I love a lot of the movies and stuff that he does, but he's hilarious to me, and I think he's somebody that I would like to see a lot more of, and he'd be a great person to see more leads go to because I think he's got a lot of range and depth that he can do. But again, it goes down to that like, okay, one, it's hard to get an Asian leading man role anyway, and then two, he's also not. He's like us. He's not the most like typical attractive guy in the world. So seeing him get leads is really fun to me, just because it just me even more represented as that not super fit martial artist type body, really good looking Asian guy. He's just more like me.
Yeah, and I loved how they made his brother, who I think is played by actor, I think is Harry Shum Jr. or Harry Shum or whatever his name is, who's like really good looking and everything, and it's like they made him kind of like the jerk and everything, which was so awesome. I'm like, finally, man, it's not like the good looking guy is the one that and like they made her like hate him as well, like, oh, I don't like your brother either. And it was like it wasn't like she fell in love with the brother because he was good looking. It was great, and I'm also glad that they, which nothing's wrong with it. I don't mind it, but because I'm married to an Asian woman and I love Asian women, but it's I'm glad they didn't put his brother with an Asian woman. Like they gave him, it was kind of more of I think she's Hispanic or whatever. And it's like it's good to see that because I think in a lot of films too, that's another thing is like when you see when you see an Asian person that has a love interest, it's like another Asian person, it's an Asian guy with an Asian woman or an Asian woman with an Asian guy. So it's kind of nice to see that as well, being portrayed. Like you said, not the greatest film in the world, but you know, it was a good, like you said, it was a good rom com, and I appreciated it. I appreciated them casting Jimmy for it because he's not your typical, he's just your typical Asian guy. So
The other fun thing about this film, so many films like this set up to be super stereotypical, in the character of Jimmy O Yang would change to make himself more presentable and more, this like character that is deserving of love. But
yes,
he never changed. He just remained himself and he was true to himself the whole time.
didn't he
And
make candles?
perceptions of him changed because people realized this is somebody that I can really like. Versus,
Didn't he make candles in that too? And like he was afraid to like say,
yep.
"Oh, I don't want to do business like my dad. I make candles or something."
Like manly scented candles was his whole thing. But it's
that was the best part. Was the
like
candles, man.
he stayed true to himself the whole time, but like somebody fell in love with him for being him, not because he changed. Which,
For sure.
starting out when I started watching the movie, I thought, this is going to be one of those where like, oh, he gets contacts and he gets in better shape and then he wins the girl. But it wasn't. It was the whole, hey, I'm a pretty awesome guy. And if you can't see that, that's fine. And then, the girl finally saw it. Yes, he did do some pretty shady stuff early on to get her to meet him. But yeah, it was one of those things where it's like, hey, you don't necessarily have to change to win the girl kind of thing. And I thought that was a really cool play on it that you don't really see very often. I'm not even just like for Asian characters. I'm talking for rom-coms in general. You have all kinds of female characters all the time that are supposed to be this dorky, nerdy person, and they finally get this makeover, and then all of a sudden they're desirable. Like, it's terrible with women. Like, that is so stereotypical of romantic comedies, and one of the big reasons why I hate so many of them.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things like, it was nice. It was sort of refreshing to have sort of a reverse on that, where it wasn't somebody that changes themselves to win somebody, but people's perceptions of that person changing.
For sure.
So that was a nice change on that. Again, pretty good movie, fun. If you like rom-coms, you'll probably really like this one. But not something that, I'm going to say is, hey, the greatest movie in the world, but a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I love the references about, debating is Die Hard a Christmas movie and and everything like that's like because it's like, oh, that's the normal debate that normal people have, It's not like we're sitting there talking about like, an Asian film or anything. We talk about normal films like that. And it's cool because I've had that debate too. It's like, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? It's like, yeah, of course it's a Christmas movie. It is. It is a Christmas movie. It's one of the best Christmas films of all time, but it's and I like that. I like that film. I mean, like I said, it's baby steps and I'm glad to see we're taking them and I'm glad to see, it's improving and getting better and hopefully we just keep going up from here and everything and the more I think Asian faces we see on screen, whether it be TV or film, I think is better for us.
So I'm gonna take a step back now, like way back.
Okay.
So one of my favorite actors of all time is George Takei.
Oh yeah.
He was the first, man. And like I said, you gotta tip your hat to Star Trek. All right. I love Star Trek in general. I wouldn't call myself a Trekkie. I just love Star Trek.
Yeah.
I love science fiction in general. I should put it that way. That is my favorite genre of film is science fiction. So I love science fiction films.
Sweet.
Loved Star Wars. I was a huge Firefly fan. If you watch it's my
Firefly,
favorite.
Man. Firefly. Serenity made me cry, but man, Firefly was so good.
But I absolutely love science fiction. But I look back and I say to myself, okay, George Takei was like one of the first, but not just for Asian people, but for African Americans. It was one of the very first times an African American was put in a position of power in a TV show.
Yeah.
It was the first time an Asian American was put in power on a TV show.
Yeah.
It was the first interracial kiss. It was so revolutionary in inclusion that It was the first time like you ever really saw anywhere that like, hey, that can just be genuinely accepted. People people were upset, people questioned it, people were pretty terrible about it in a lot of cases, but it still developed a huge following. People eventually stopped looking at color and just started looking at the show,
Yeah.
uh, which is just something truly revolutionary that I don't feel like gets talked about nearly enough. So this episode, I thought, I'd save it, kind of like talk about all these things, and I look at it and I say to myself, how sad is it that you have a show from the '70s that can do this, right? And then they just stop. You didn't see any real change for African Americans, for Asian Americans, or anyone for a long time after that. How
Yeah.
can you have something that becomes one of the most popular things ever and say, oh, well, obviously it won't work?
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't have African Americans in positions of power. Obviously, you can't have Asian Americans in positions of power. Like, that's unrealistic and you can never do it. And their whole excuse was, well, I mean, like, that's in the future. It's set in space. I'm like, so what you're saying is in the future, it should be okay, but right now it's not. I feel like you're kind of sticking your head in the sand and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And it
Yeah.
just like amazed me. Like, I was like, oh, like it was one of the first ones I thought of when you were talking about, hey, great Asian characters. I'm like, Sulu, one of my favorite characters of all time.
Yeah.
And then I was like, there's that. And then I go through this giant long list trying to figure out where the next one was. And it was Harold and Kumar go to White Castle. That's a really big gap.
Huh. Yeah.
I mean, like that's a huge gap in representation there. And I just started thinking about it. I'm like, that is insane to me that like, you have in the '70s something coming up and everyone that like realistically, you're like, how is that not like the start of everything for not just Asians, but like I said, African Americans and stuff like that as well? I mean, like, it really should have been a bigger stepping point for as hugely popular as it was, and like, even like, you have this white guy writing this show, right? And this idea for Star Trek. And it was this whole like, he had in his mind, like, this is how the future will be, where everyone is accepted and everyone is on an even playing field. Everyone can make themselves something. And he had this great like vision of like the future. And his vision of the future was like, we all get along, everyone's represented, we're this peaceful culture and everything. And it's just like, why didn't it grow? Why didn't you see more of it? And it kind of makes you wonder like how it's possible.